Namaste. A very warm welcome to all the participants in today's webinar. This is our 90th webinar in our talk series. A very special welcome to speaker Dr. Sujata Kelkar Shetty for making the time to be with us here today. Before we introduce our speaker and hand over to Sujata ji, a little information for those who were not here earlier and have joined us today. Rtambhara Wellness is a collective of like-minded individuals that look at wellness in a holistic way. Not just the body, but the mind as well, and all through the practice of knowledge, wisdom that comes from our ancient Indian scriptures and heritage. We conduct corporate programs and retreats for wellness that looks at personal transformation, and the details are available on the website rtambharawellness.com. We also conduct webinars regularly, and our earlier talks are uploaded on YouTube. If you would like to be a part of a community and volunteer, please post your contact details, cell number, email ID so that we can add you to our groups. In today's session, we have a talk for 60 minutes followed by question and answer. Please feel free to post your questions on the chat function and Dr. Sujata will answer your questions after the talk. So let's get on with today's session and know more about Introduction to Smart TM Program, Stress Management and Resilience Training. May I now request our Director of Operations, Mr. Rohan Nayak, to introduce Dr. Sujata. Over to you, Rohan.
Thank you, Rashmi. Good evening to everybody. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sujata Kelkar Shetty. Dr. Shetty is a US-trained biological scientist with publications in peer-reviewed journals. She did a postdoctoral training from the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. While at the National Institute of Health, she was curious about the interaction between the mind and the body and studied the mechanisms of how mental stress negatively impacts our physical health. Dr. Shetty has been focused on researching and writing on preventive health for the last decade. She wrote a regular preventive health column for Mint, the leading business newspaper of India, for many years. Her writing is unique in its emphasis on cutting-edge medical research and age-old Ayurvedic practices. Her book, 99 Not Out, Your Guide to a Long and Healthy Life, was published by Penguin Random House in May 2019. The book received many excellent reviews in Indian dailies and magazines. Dr. Shetty is a certified life coach. She also has a bachelor's degree in genetics from the University of Wisconsin and a PhD in toxicology from the University of Kentucky. Welcome, Dr. Shetty. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rohan. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and thank you so much for inviting me again. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen now so that we can start the talk and the presentation. There we go. So today's talk is about introducing you to SMART. SMART stands for Stress Management and Resilience Training. This is a program that has been devised or created rather by Dr. Amit Sood, who was originally at AIIMS and moved to Mayo Clinic to work there as an oncologist more than 20 years ago. He subsequently discovered that, he thought that stress was something he was leaving behind. He thought America was, was a place where there would be less stress because America was a land of plenty. However, he discovered, like all other countries, America possibly more than other countries had, a fairly decent dose of stress. So he started to work on stress management and resilience on the side, and subsequently came up with this program that he has tested by clinical trials in nurses and physicians and white collar workers and doctors of all kinds, and college students and medical students, etc. So over 20 clinical trials looking at various parameters that we connect with stress, whether it's anxiety or difficulty sleeping or irritability. And he found that this program, when it's applied, does indeed reduce those various markers. Now, the reason for that, right, it's important for us to understand that the reason why we're seeing this increase in stress, and the point of this particular figure is to show you that 80% of us said that we were stressed, and this was before the pandemic, right? And these were numbers that were in existence before things got as bad as they did over the last 2 years. And within that survey, 40% of us were found to be lonely, 20% of us were found to be depressed. So we're talking about numbers that have subsequently most likely gone up. In fact, that's what people who are mental health professionals are saying. Now, the reason for that, right? Why is it that we talk about stress so much more than our forefathers did? My grandfathers, used to ask me, what is this stress? I don't understand this stress. What are you people talking about? So the reason that he could say that, apart from the fact that he was an extraordinarily equanimous human being, but he hadn't heard that word so much when he was, growing up and in his 20s and his 30s, the way that I have experienced it in my 20s and 30s. And certainly when we talk to 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds today, it's very much a part of their day's experience. And the reason for that is that most human brains, right, have to carry an excessive cognitive and an excessive emotional load that they are ill-equipped to carry. Why is that? The reason for that is that the world has been moving at a logarithmic pace when it comes to technology and innovation. We have amazing things around us that were just not even possible for most of us to imagine when we were little. And then if we think about our parents and our grandparents, it's a different world today, right? The pace of technological innovation is logarithmic, while the pace of the brain's evolution is linear. And when you look at that graph, you see that there is a gap. And that gap is what causes an overwhelm for our brains. So it is very natural for us to be feeling that overwhelm. And just to give you a visual example of the way the technology has moved, right? So in the 1960s, that's what a computer looked like. I think my father worked on one of these computers in graduate school at Berkeley. And the hard drive of that IBM had a memory of 5 megabytes. 5 megabytes. If you look at the photograph on your right, there you've got this man holding an iPhone, just like the one I have here. And it has some 84 gigabytes of storage capacity, right? So we're talking about an extraordinary computer literally in the palm of our hands. And that's just one example. We can talk about so many more, right? And all of that means that our brain is just not able to keep pace. Our brain wasn't designed to be able to play with all this technology, to be able to use all this technology. It can, but then it gets overwhelmed. And that's what we are seeing today. So this is a picture to sort of, show you that overwhelm. And I'm going to now ask you to do this exercise with me, right? It's a mental exercise. So say I've got a glass of water in my hand, and I'm holding it, right? And I ask you, what do you think the weight of the glass is? Now, some of you will say 200 grams, some of you will say 500 grams, some of you will say, well, it depends on how much water there is in there, what the weight of the glass was to begin with. It depends on, how you're thinking. But the point here is that the weight of the glass is going to increase the longer I hold it, right? So if I hold it for 5 seconds and I put it down, then it's very easy for me to hold it and I barely feel the weight at all. If I'm holding it for a minute, okay, now I'm noticing the weight. If I hold it for 10 minutes, I'm noticing the weight more. An hour, a couple of hours, the whole day, if I have to hold it, my arm will go numb, the glass will fall and shatter. So it's really a question of how long you're holding on to it, right? That impacts the weight of it as far as your perception of it is concerned. And your stress and worries are like that, right? If you think about them for a little while, nothing happens. If you think about them a bit longer, you start to hurt, right? And if you do it all day long, then you begin to get numb. paralyzed, incapable of doing anything unless you drop them. But it's easy to say, drop it, right? It's easy to say, drop that thought, but it becomes hard for our brains to do that because of the excessive cognitive and emotional overload. So all the things that we've been told to do by our scriptures becomes harder because of the world that we live in. Not able to, yeah, there we go. So, and one of the reasons it becomes harder is that because chronic stress has an impact that is rather sort of physiological. It has an impact that, and this is something that, this is not something to make us worry, but this is just something for us to know, that essentially over time, and this has been seen in studies in people who have been chronically stressed, their prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus actually atrophy. Atrophy means they shrink in size. And what are the implications? The implications is that our ability to think deeply, our ability to memorize things, our ability to be patient, our ability to be kind, our ability to be empathetic, all of these abilities become compromised when these areas are compromised. The amygdala hypertrophying or increasing in size means that our ability to get stressed gets better and better and better. Because the more you use it, the stronger that area of the brain becomes, right? So you've got a situation where you get better at getting stressed, and you become less able to be kind, to be empathetic, to think deeply and problem solve, to have your memory the way it used to be. And I don't know about you, but I know that when I look at the world around me, I'm seeing all of those things happening. And I'm not saying all of our brains are shrinking, right? But I am seeing our prefrontal cortex and our hippocampus compromised in the ways that people are interacting with each other and all the things that we're seeing in the world around us. So given all of this, right? Given all of this, what do we do, right? So the good news here is, that you can help yourself. And now let's look at some of the amazing people that have shown remarkable resilience in the face of extraordinary adversity. Whether you've got J.K. Rowling or Thomas Edison or Neil Armstrong, Nelson Mandela, Viktor Frankl, all of you will know all of these names, and all of you will know some of their backstories, right? And if you know some of their backstories, you know that they have gone through extraordinary adversity and have managed to thrive in spite of it and despite it, right? So then resilience is the ability to withstand adversity and bounce back from difficult life events. Now, being resilient doesn't mean that people don't experience stress, that they don't have emotional upheaval, and they don't have suffering. And all of these people had plenty and in good measure. Because some people equate resilience with mental toughness, and that's really not what it is, right? It's about working through whatever is happening, problem solving, moving forward, but really working through the experience. And I feel like it's really important for us to understand that, one of the greatest acts of self-compassion that we can engage in is to build our mental and emotional resilience. Our physical resilience will be an offshoot of that, but because it naturally feeds it, right? And this is because our survival depends on it. Now, we can't change the world around us, right? We can't change the people that live in it, but we can change ourselves. We can influence through our ways of thought, words, and action. We can influence the organization that we work in, the people that we are surrounded by, and finally, we have tremendous ability to help ourselves. So it's a bit like, if you think of yourself if you think of an analogy of a car, right? Driving on Bangalore roads. Now, we all know how busy Bangalore roads are. And imagine like driving, on a regular busy road in Bangalore, and you've got a regular car, and you're driving the car. And yeah, so when you're driving the car, right? And you've got this busy road, yes, your technical skill matters. Of course it matters to navigate Bangalore roads. But say it's raining, like it was a couple of weeks ago, really strongly. And now your technical skill matters even more. And that's exactly what it's like as far as your mind is concerned. The world is changing at a rapid pace. That's not going to change. The world is going to throw challenges at us. That's not going to change. So what really matters is our mind's ability to handle, what comes in front of it with deftness, with the ability to adapt, right? Because your ability to adapt is what helps you thrive and survive. And that's, exactly the point here, right? So building resilience then is not really, it's not like an option, right? But there's more good news. And the more good news comes from, it's been around forever, right? So I've just shown you a picture of the father of neuroscience, CAJAL, because I really like his drawings. Those are drawings of our neurons, and they're beautiful. I think they're beautiful. And he came up with the idea of neuroplasticity, the idea that our brain has the ability to adapt, to change, to transform itself. And contrary to what people think, this ability doesn't sort of die out as you get older. It's still very much there. So the ability for your brain to learn new skills, the ability of your brain to adapt and to strengthen certain pathways very much exists as you age. And so does neurogenesis, which is the ability of your neurons to actually regenerate. So all of this is still possible, right? It's possible from the time we are born till we die. The connections in our brain cells, the connections between our brain cells rather, are constantly happening. And our brains are constantly transforming. How? By what we feed our brains, right? At a mental level, at a physical level, at an emotional level. And so it's important for us to understand that positive change and growth is possible at any age. It's not a question of age. It's just a question of intention followed by action. So we can indeed help our brains. But what is happening right now is that we are creating a world where transient sensory pleasures are replacing the emotional joys of deep connection, right? So we're becoming cognitively brilliant, as I'm sure you're seeing around us, but remaining emotional infants. And then you've got that situation, and you've got this extraordinary cognitive overload that our brains have to manage, that they're ill-equipped to carry. So what do we need? So what we need to understand is that we need to relearn how to live in this environment, but it's not hard. It's not some, complicated task. The program itself is, asks you to practice for maybe in the beginning, it's just 5-6 minutes a day. It's just a question of timing of the practice, and the practice itself is also enjoyable. So it's all good news from here on in. But I want to give you a little bit of an understanding of what the program itself involves, because it has 3 layers. It has a layer of awareness, it has a layer of attention, and then it has a layer of the attitude, right? Now, why do we need to do this? Because you have to understand that when we talk about that excessive cognitive and emotional overload, we can't hope to relieve ourselves of it, right? The world is what it is. We have to handle it. So the only thing left then is to increase our brain's capacity to hold that load, right? Because it has the ability to be neuroplastic. It has the ability for neurogenesis. So then this is a low-hanging fruit that is worth exploring. So stress then puts us on a downward spiral, but resilience puts us on an upward spiral. And I don't know about you, but I definitely want to be on an upward spiral, right? So let's look at ways in which we can become more resilient. So the first first sphere that you've got there is called awareness. Now, what is awareness? Awareness is just about learning how your brain functions, and you already started on that journey today, that it has certain vulnerabilities that impact our thoughts, words, and actions. And these vulnerabilities deplete our resilience. Soon I'll share with you what those vulnerabilities are. Attention is about recognizing that we spend most of our time, right? This is important, most of our time during the day in default mode, which basically means that we are mind wandering. I'm going to, can I ask the audience a question over here, Reshmi? Yeah.
Yes, please do, Sujata ji.
They did a study, right? Dr. Su did a study where they asked dentists when they are working on their patients, how much of the time their mind wanders. Can you all guess in percentages and put your thoughts in your comment section, and Reshmi can read them out. Please be brave. Just come up with whatever you think the number is. 10%, 20%, more, even more. Not going to give you any more hints. Reshmi, has anybody written?
Yes, they have in the chat section. Even I was mentioning mine.
Please do.
Yeah.
Read out, Reshmi.
Yes. So Urmilaji 90%, Jaya Rao 80, Irinya 99, Padmasini ji 80, Aparna 50, Beena ji 80%. So most of them 80, 60, 75.
Very good. I'm impressed. You're right. I mean, I didn't guess 80% of the time that their mind was wandering. I was hoping that it wasn't, that much, but you're all a lot wiser than me. And yes, so 80% of the time when the dentists are working on us, their minds are wandering. And this happens the moment we become experts at something, right? The moment we've mastered something, the brain decides to wander. And this happens to us when we're driving home from work. We've driven the entire way and we haven't noticed the scenery, right? We've been thinking about the email that we need to send, what we're making for dinner, what we will tell our kids, whatever. There's so many open files in our brain and we just go from one to the other. So, and in that state, we allow chance to determine what gets through our sensory system. Now, trained attention is a desirable alternative then because you choose what enters your conscious experience. And if you can do that even for a few moments, it's not ideal for us to be focused all day long. It's not even going to happen. But if we can learn to train our attention to focus at very specific times in the day, the impact on our lives and our well-being is going to be outsized. And I'll show you how. The third layer is that of attitude, right? Mindset, or a set of beliefs that we carry. And our belief in turn depends on our thoughts. So if we can have our thoughts trained by a GPS for the mind, right? A GPS that's based on core values, what we're going to get is a resilient mindset. Because that's what SMART offers you, right? The opportunity for training your mind so that you use gratitude, compassion, acceptance, meaning, and forgiveness. These are the 5 core values. And you learn to apply them to your life so that you are then living with that GPS in your mind that serves you to lead a life that is more resilient. Now we're going to jump right in. And we're going to talk about the awareness piece, right? What are these brain vulnerabilities that we're talking about here? Now, they happen to all start with the letter F. So I'm going to let you take a stab at it. What do you think they are? Reshmi, can you read them out? Has anyone written anything?
Yes. So the comments are fatigue, focus, fear, familiarity, fear of failure, frustration.
Very good. Yes. Excellent. So we're going to focus, we're going to focus on 3 of those. And that's namely focus, as somebody guessed right, fatigue, and fear, right? These are the 3 we're going to look at today. Focus, fatigue, and fear. Let's look at focus first. So as I just told you, right, our brain spends the bulk of its time in wandering attention. Now, wandering attention, the problem with that is that we are not consciously choosing what enters our zone of focus. Now, what is that like? It's like going into a restaurant and allowing the waiter to choose what you're going to eat. When you go into a restaurant, what do you typically do? You look at the menu and you look at maybe what you'd like to eat based on your dietary preferences, your mood, the price point, whether you're vegetarian that day because or maybe you're fasting, or you have certain other restrictions on that day, and then you make your choice, right? But when we allow our attention to wander most of the time, we're acting as if we're going into restaurants and allowing the waiter to decide what he gives us to eat. And wandering attention is what correlates with negative emotions. It's what correlates with the lack of productivity. And it leads to multiple psychological and physical conditions. So then decreasing the time that we spend in wandering attention is going to increase our health. It's just logical. The second vulnerability that we have is that of fatigue, right? So the brain tires in about 60 to 90 minutes of activity. And the brain doesn't have any brain receptors. So the brain doesn't have the ability to feel any pain, which is why you can have brain surgery fully awake. I'm sure you've seen this in the movies, and it's true. Now, how do we know that our brains are tired? Therefore, we find out indirectly, right? We find out by feeling more irritable. We find out by losing focus, losing our ability to focus as clearly. We reduce our ability to engage, right? Our creativity drops. And what we end up doing in those situations is that we go grab a cup of coffee and we try to motor through. We continue. We've all done this. We push it further. We don't really give it the rest it needs. And the rest it needs is not watching TV. The rest it needs is very specific. And we're going to talk about that in the program. And it's not that long either. It's not about spending a lot of time doing it, right? But exercise is a great rest, right? For example, doing something that is meaningful, even if it means looking at pictures of your loved ones, something that little can make impact at that point in time, because your brain just needs to rest, but it needs it in a very specific way. The third piece is fear, right? Now, one of the most important tasks that our brain has is to keep us alive and to keep us safe. And therefore, our attention prioritizes noticing threats. And the threats can be physical, the threats can be financial, the threats can be social, the threats can be emotional, right? And our threat focus is now compounded when we think about the world we live in with this phenomenal connectivity that we have, right? We have access to all this information so that we have a daily dose of potentially painful experiences at our doorstep or in our inbox, wherever you like your news coming in. Combine that with the uncertainty that we live in, natural uncertainty that we live in, the exceptional ability that we have to imagine, we're experiencing fears all the time. And it's like we're in prey mode, even when there isn't a predator around. There is a solution for that. And the solution for that is curiosity. And the program engages your curiosity, because when you are curious, you can't be afraid. It's very interesting, right? Because you've engaged your neocortex. And when you're kind, you can't be stressed, but we'll get into that more soon. Back to attention, right? So again, it's really, really important for us to recognize that staying in the default mode all day long isn't good for us, and finding ways to make that attention intentional, even if it is in short bursts of time through the day, is very important, because we have in our default mode, the reason negativity is company in the default mode is because we have a predisposition for discounting the good and inflating the bad. We all have it, right? So leaving our thoughts and perceptions to chance isn't a recipe for the healthiest or the most productive way of life. Also, when we're in a state of worry, right? We all know, we've all experienced it. When we're in a state of worry, we risk not spending quality time with our loved ones. We risk not noticing the beautiful world that we live in, that is all around us, right? We miss out on life. So what's the point? Trained attention, on the other hand, will even if it is for a few moments of the day, right? If you just sprinkle it through the day, and they're carefully chosen, can have an outsized impact on your relationships, on your experience of life, and your well-being, right? Now, the third piece is your mindset, right? Now, mindset is basically the set of beliefs that you carry. And beliefs are, again, dependent on your thoughts. So given that our thoughts can be thought of in different ways, right? Because we can have a different perspective rather on every situation. SMART then offers you an uplifting construct that allows you to direct your thoughts, just like a GPS. So, and you have these 5 different beliefs, or rather values, to choose from, and these values are timeless. They've been described and prescribed by just about every scripture that we can think of, and by every scripture I mean every religion rather that we can think of, and it's important to also realize that each of them individually is not really sufficient, right? They have strength and value when they all work in concert, because they support and enhance each other. So when your gratitude alone without the other 4 can seem frivolous. Compassion alone, if you're just being compassionate all the time without having that the ability to forgive and accept, can become very depleting, right? And you can't forgive without gratitude and compassion. So they all really work together. But what SMART does is it allows you to find a way to engage with these values. And none of this is going to come as a surprise to any of you. We've all heard about these values, and you know that they're important, but they're very hard to practice often. And what SMART does is help you break them down so that they are easier to practice. It really helps you rethink about the challenges that you face in real time in a more productive way, in a more adaptive way, so that you can overcome what you're facing. And when we think about how much time we have to engage in a program like SMART, and we're all leading very busy lives, please remember that our minds are naturally created to graze on and take in information. We love gathering information, right? We were hunter food gatherers for most of our existence, but these values are timeless. So we can continue to gather information, but the information has a half-life. Most of what we know is going to be overturned, right? So while these values are eternal, so the more time you spend on engaging with these values, the more the impact of that is going to be outsized, unlike any information that you could gather spending the same amount of time. So that's important to realize in terms of the kind of time you might spend. Now about the program itself. It's basically over 5 weeks. It's shared in 5 different modules. Essentially, it's about 4 modules of teaching time, and the 5th module is really about recap. The module itself is 45 minutes, to an hour long, and then you're on your way, because the application of this program isn't one that is going to take a lot of time through your day. So this is, yoga is wonderful for you, and it should be practiced as often as is possible. Meditation too, but all of those things, by virtue of their structure, require time. This is one program where you're not going to be spending a lot of time. You're going to be spending it as you lead your life, right? In the pace of your life is how you include these different practices that are shared with you on a weekly basis. Okay, so now I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. I'm collaborating with Dr. Sood in real time right now to bring this program to you in India. He's very excited to bring it here. And all of the information I've shared with you is all, is all his sort of intellectual property in a way. I'm just the messenger. And if anybody is interested in taking the SMART program, then please do reach out to me. And like I said, I'll be happy to take any questions that you have. You can keep the slide in case you just want to read more about it. Stop sharing. Should I stop sharing now?
Yes. I would request the guests to ask any questions to Dr. Sujata, or you can even, put it in a message in the chat function.
Yes, please feel free to write in your questions, or if there's a comment you'd like to leave, please feel free to leave it in the chat box, or speak directly. It's always wonderful to engage with everyone.
We have a comment from Loyola D'Souza.
Yes.
Thank you literally for the thought-provoking presentation. You mentioned about neuroplasticity and the brain's ability to grow, but does neuroplasticity continue to work with aging? Can it be impacted by disability, stroke, etc.? Will the program, just one moment, will the program be effective for such cases?
It depends upon the person's cognitive ability to really just understand what we're talking about right now. If they're able to sit through this conversation, they're able to attend the program. It's basically administered either via Zoom or in person, depending on the size of the audience and the feasibility, but it can be done both ways. That was a second question asked by Jaya Rao. Hello, Jaya. And it's once a week. So there are 5 modules that are administered once a week. The idea is to give everyone 40 days to really get, not close to 40 days, a little short of 40 days, to build at least some of the practices into habits. So it can be, Mukesh Garg asked that question as well. Yes, it can be administered online as well as in person. Again, depends upon the group. Most welcome, Chandar. Most welcome, Aparna.
any further questions, the participants can unmute themselves and ask.
Please do, please do. It's always great to hear from everyone.
Hi, doctor. This is Beena.
Hi. Hi, Beena. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
It's so
Thank
nice
you.
to hear your voice.
I'll put my video on. Okay. All right. Here I am.
Oh, it's so
Okay.
nice to see you.
Yeah, I know. Same here. Lovely talk. I just wanted to ask you is that, you talked about fear. And so is actually love the opposite of fear? And if you love everything around you and, you have that compassion, then can you keep fear at bay?
I think so. Yes. I mean, yes. So the answer is all of these values that we talk about, they're all moving towards love, right? And I mean, love is sort of the ultimate. And if you're feeling that love and that openness and that curiosity and that sort of engagement with everybody, right? If you're feeling that, then yeah, then fear is very far away. Fear is sort of on the other side. But the problem that arises is that it, the world around us makes it difficult for us to access that. And therefore, how do we stay in that state? How do we keep that state going? And that's what the program is about.
How much do you think gratitude helps in actually, a daily sort of idea of gratitude of,
Usually,
maybe,
right? So Beena,
yeah,
that's one of the 5 principles we talk about, right? So
Right,
it's gratitude, compassion, acceptance, meaning, and forgiveness. And if I think of them as, the 5 fingers, I think this is love right here. So what you're talking about is really, where it has to spring from and where it comes back to.
Okay, thanks very much.
Welcome. Padmasini, we can discuss the fee structure. We honestly haven't figured it out yet. We're really just in the process of organizing it, but we're very happy to give the talk on the Rtambhara platform, and we'll figure out the fees. But yeah, so that's the answer to your question. Thank you, Gautam. I mean, you're welcome, Gautam. Hi.
I don't know if anyone else is ready to ask a question, so I'll just jump in. Curiosity was an unexpected factor in this mix. And so can you elaborate a little bit more? As humans, yes, we're always looking for something new, engaging, but again, that has got out of control in our current technological world where we keep jumping from one to another and can't linger long enough to fully explore one thing. So can you talk a little bit more about that curiosity aspect and how it's addressed?
Yes. So that it's about really being curious in the moment that you're in and in real time about the world outside and around you. It's not about being curious in finding new facts, but it's about being able to see what's happening around you and notice the things that you otherwise might not have noticed, like the colors of the petals, the number of petals in the flowers that you might have in your garden, or the way the blinds are sort of, forming shadows. Just noticing, just building curiosity in a different way about the things that you otherwise wouldn't even look at. So it's very much a part of the program, and it's called Curious Moments. So it's about engaging your mind in finding those moments when it otherwise would, choose to do other things.
Now, usually our attention is focused on survival, right? Avoiding threats and dangers. So to find those kind of curious moments of like looking at the blinds and noticing the shades, how is that would have to be something consciously chosen because it's
Yes.
not a direct threat or doesn't give me any immediate pleasure. So if I have neither one of those operating, something to make me run away or be alert about or to be drawn towards, then how does the brain then decide what are those things to focus on?
Well, first you have to, be convinced that it's good for you, right? So this whole exercise about intentional attention is only going to happen when you buy in to the idea that this is important. It's a bit like, if you've never exercised and I tell you, you need to go, these are all brain exercises. And if I tell you to go off and, walk, and there's a beautiful park right next door to you, but it's never something that you have done. And I say, just, go for a walk. And my hope for you is that you will, you'll eventually walk, say 10 kilometers. In the beginning, that half kilometer is going to be a strain. It's going to feel like, oh, what's the point of this? I'm not enjoying this. But eventually it is something that you will begin to notice, begin to enjoy the process of. So intentional attention is something that we have to work on. But if you buy in, and this introduction is like a taster, right? But the idea is to really help you build that awareness about your brain's vulnerabilities, so that you're convinced that it is a good idea to indeed explore intentional attention in a more conscious way.
So it's something that has to be experienced to be able to fully experience the benefits.
Yes, and it's also about engaging with our loved ones in the same way. So it's about building that curiosity in the way that we engage with our loved ones. And there we see a immediate feedback. The way that we engage with our loved ones. And there we see I'm getting an echo, and then we are inspired to keep doing it. So it's just about application and then noticing its impact and then we notice and therefore we keep carrying on with those habits. Or
thank you.
Carry on with those practices, and then they become habits.
Yeah, Paul here. Sorry, it might have been the echo might be because I was driving, but isn't it really just about renewing your mind? Isn't it human nature that you get bored with things, with monotonous things, and you need variety, you need change, you need enlightenment?
Mm-hmm.
So you
absolutely. So we talk about that. We talk about that in the first module.
About stimulating the brain.
We talk about that in the first module. I'm hearing a lot of background noise. I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Can people? Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, so the brain loves novelty. And this is why when we go to a restaurant with our husbands or our wives who we've been married to for 10 years or more, and our friend who we haven't seen in months walks through the door, we'd rather talk to them than talk to our spouses, right? Our brain loves novelty. So the idea then is to find a way of making the things we love novel. And that is, it takes effort, but the rewards are outsized, because it's not like we don't want to engage with our loved ones, but we just have to find a way of bringing that novelty in. You're absolutely right. Our brain loves novelty, but that doesn't mean we have to give it that in a manner that is not necessarily healthy and productive for our lives. And that's one example, but we really get into that more in the program itself. This is a taster.
Any further questions? Everyone can just put it on the chat or ask. We have a question from Srinjoy ji.
100% Srinjoy ji. I think your question is, can you increase your EQ? And I think that's exactly what we're working on here, right? So when we talk about resilient mindset, that's really EQ. And even increasing your ability to attend is going to expand your EQ. For fees outside India, you can go to the Resilient Option website, and you could take the course with Dr. Sue directly. So it's called Resilient Option. I'll just type it out for you. That's the name of the website. And he's no longer with Mayo because he's doing this full time.
I think if there are no further questions, let me ask one. You talked about the technology gap, the way technology is advanced and how the brain is slow in getting tuned to that. So that is still going to continue. I don't think there's going to be any way that can be reduced. But these new cars, self-driven cars, driverless, which is coming in. So do you think those would bridge the gap, or how is it going to matter?
No, so you mean in terms of that reducing our stress, in terms of the driving piece? Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we will find ways, we will find technological solutions as well to reducing our, our stress. But the irony is that the brain still has that cognitive load to carry and that emotional load to carry, right? And that's not going to change, because when you think about information, you think about how much information our brains are carrying today compared to what they did, even 10 years ago. Right. And then given our natural curiosity and our desire to accumulate more information, it's a tough one. We really do need to learn certain habits to protect our brains. It's no different from, exercising like this in a disciplined manner. It's no different from your yoga routine that you have every morning. It's really no different from any of that. It's just that we've never done it. That's all it is. So, and nothing that and Dr. Sudha put this program together, but many of you might already have found your ways of accessing these principles through your study of the scriptures, and that's fine too. I mean, it's not about, this is not the only way to go about it, but what I love about it is that it's based on understanding how our brain works. So there's no judgment anymore. There's no reason to judge ourselves. It's just the way our brains are and just the way the world is around us, right? So what can we do to support it? And the second reason I love this program is because there is evidence to show that it has helped other people. We know what we have to do when we read the scriptures, but the how becomes difficult, or the how is the challenge. And this shows you how, in a very step-by-step fashion, because the program was designed in America. I love how they always break everything down. Dr. Sudha has done that very nicely. So it's all broken down into bite-sized pieces that are easy for anybody to imbibe. And like I said, the results are kind of immediate because you're doing it in real time. It's not like doing your yoga and pranayama, and of course you find its benefit, but you've got to stick to it for 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, and then you start to see its impact on your physical body. You start to see its impact. Of course, pranayama, you see its impact on the mind immediately. But with this, it doesn't require, the bind is less effortful, and the impact is I feel is can often be very powerful, because it's going to help you in the relationships that you have, in the meetings that you're walking into, in the business meetings that you're walking into, in the relationships that you engage with at home, because we all have very finite amount of time at home with our families. So how do you turn that into quality time? What does that mean to turn it into quality time? That's the kind of stuff we work on.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Paul here again. It's really talking about cognitive approach, right? But there's also endorphins and chemical and electrical impulses that go on in the brain. So certain things can also stimulate your brain, right? So is the SMART program just really a cognitive approach, and then how does the other kind of, you know, chemical, electrical impulse kind of things work? You know, like, and even you know, singing or laughing, things like that. You know, that give you they help you as well, right? To keep positive.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Or even rosemary helps you from
100%.
losing lots of memory. Yeah.
Yes. So there's no doubt. I'm not arguing at all.
There's no doubt.
And all and end all of everything that you can do to support your ability to become more resilient and reduce and manage your stress. But I'm just saying that this is a program that that engages you cognitively and emotionally, so that you can build that resilience. There is place for everything else as well. This is not, you know, this by no means is pretending to be all that will be helpful for you. But it is what the advantage it has, like I said, is that there are clinical trials that have been done on it. Like, there's literally nothing else out there that has this kind of scientific work done on it. Then again, that doesn't mean that other things don't work. And particularly if you find something works, right, then there's no reason to look for evidence, as long as, of course, it's healthy for you. So if it's, you know, if it's sleep and it's exercise and it's you know, spending time with loved ones and it's walking in forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, as the Japanese call it. The Health Ministry of Japan, you know, recommends to its citizens that they spend time in the forest. So, you know, that there are things that we know that help us reduce our stress and manage it. But in India, that is really not accessible to us. I can't walk out of my house and go for a walk, right? Some things are just not accessible to us in India, but everything that we talk about in this program is accessible to all Indians. And that's the other reason I love it. It's not something that, you know, requires us to have to have certain means. A nurse can do it, a doctor can do it, a surgeon can do it, a driver can do it. Everyone can engage with the habits that are suggested.
I'm just going to ask a quick question, because you talked about being accessible to the whole spectrum of people and professions and stuff. Is it administered in English only?
Right now, yes. The idea is to be able to provide it in multiple languages across India. That is the plan, but we're literally just bringing it in. So it might be a while before we can translate it.
I would like to thank Dr. Sujata and all our participants for your valuable presence this evening. At Rtambhara, we look forward to your presence on select Fridays and Saturdays, where we bring to you interesting topics on holistic wellness and the arts, delivered by host of distinguished guests and knowledgeable speakers. The upcoming program details will be posted on our WhatsApp groups and social media platforms. Please do stay connected. Thank you, everyone, once again. Namaste.